encounter people right in front of them. And so long as you don't shoot anybody wearing a blue helmet, you can do so with impunity. I don't think a lot of people understand that because we call them peacemakers. Okay, so wait a minute, let me get to the question. The question is, why the hell, if people are talking about security guarantees for Ukraine in the future as part of a peace plan, do these nations have to wait for, you don't need Putin's agreement to provide security for Ukraine. It's happening now. It may or may not happen in the future following a peace. Knowing Putin and whoever the subsequent leaders of the Kremlin might be, based on past experience, it would just mean that they'll bide their time and invade again. But okay, why, if you're so concerned about a security guarantee for Putin, why don't you unilaterally, what do you need? I mean, for Ukraine, why don't you just unilaterally do it now? Why do you have to wait for Putin's approval? What is he, your daddy? So agree now. Make a security pact right now. They don't have to join NATO. I agree with Putin. We don't want them to join NATO. Fine. But the NATO nations not acting as NATO can say, we're going to provide a security pact. They can all sign on to a security pact for Ukraine and go in there right now. And by the way, the president said, again, changing his position from one day to the next. He said one day that he would consider sending U.S. troops in as part of his security guarantee. And then he said, no boots on the ground, but we'll provide air support. I don't know what air support means, but if it means dropping bombs on Russian troops, if you really are saying that that's what you're going to do, why wait? It's happening now. Why not? I know I'm going to sound like a warmonger here, and people are going to say, oh my God, if you do that, you're going to start a direct war between the United States and Russia, and you're playing around with an itchy finger on the nuclear bomb and all that kind of nonsense. And maybe so. But I'm just saying, then if that's your concern, based on what I propose, then that will be your concern the next time we go through this, security guarantees agreed upon or not, right? So what does it mean, air support? Why do we have to wait? When I say we, I don't mean the United States. I mean the world community. Yes, Dave.
All these European leaders, including Trump, they fear the most is putting boots in Ukraine because they fear the opposition coming from Democrats, coming from populist population in Europe. So that's why no waiting, Gary. Speak the language. That is immediately send Marco Rubio to Latin American country, figure out an incentive to bring as many Latin American trained soldiers now just to go there. Just to be present there, has no violation of NATO, nothing, but just to be present there with the prospect that if they go through the program, they might allow to stay longer, eventually become a European citizen. I think this is
listen, instead of rounding up all these illegal aliens and detaining them and throwing them out, why not create a mercenary force? And if they join the mercenary force and they go to Ukraine to fight the Russians, if they survive and they come back, then we fast track them to U.S. citizenship. How about that?
Those Colombians already there in Ukraine, 3,000-4,000, right? They are they don't speak Ukrainian, but the leader are trained. And
they don't have to speak Ukrainian. All they have to do is follow orders. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you. But the important thing is just having enough number present there.
Got the point, and I underscored it for you, and we're going to move on. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
By the way, I've long said that if the illegal aliens were given opportunity to provide service to this nation, and it wouldn't have to necessarily just be in the military, but in other areas, as a path to citizenship, I bet you most of them would grab onto that opportunity if they're able. Alan.
Gary, that was incredible. First, I do want to thank my good friend Scott for his reference to my form and also for his reference to the beautiful women in the cabinet. I mean, we've had Frances Perkins, we've had Janet Reno, we've had Hillary Clinton. I mean, haven't you ever heard the phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder? Okay.
That's interesting coming from you, but go ahead.
Okay. I accept your invitation. I appreciate being included in your forum. I would say sound is not the most important thing, but the UI to Clubhouse, and I hope what you're going to get, it only affects it doesn't negatively affect your UI.
No, it's going to actually positively affect my able body. What it might do is degrade or improve. And I want to know. I just want an air check from you there, Alan. Just an air check.
That's actually a mic check. Okay, but Herman Cain. I'm thinking about publishing a story that Herman Cain died of Trump derangement syndrome. And if you think about this seriously, he actually did. He refused to get his COVID shots, and he died. And so I think Trump derangement syndrome may be fatal. So I'm not so sure that politics should be entertainment. When it is, people die. So actually, I think Trump derangement syndrome could have fatal results. I know you've got the candidate coming up. I do want it to be very clear that the candidate did say in my room that he thinks Trump should be impeached. And I do have it on tape, so he can't go back on that. Here is a Republican who believes Trump.
I hope you guys hear that clip because I'm screaming my head off. I'm asking him if Congress should arrest and impeach Trump. He's like, yes.
Those who don't know history are inevitably.
I cannot believe it, but Thomas Massey is currently on this guy's crazy X account.
I don't.
Bush Jr.
I mean, I could only speculate. I have thought that when they talk about victims, now they may consider some of these billionaires who got caught up in this to be victims, because it would be embarrassing to them. Admittedly, the legislation that Rokana and I introduced, because we have to get 218 signatures, we did have to allow for exceptions for national security. But I think there's still a space in there where they are obligated to disclose if Epstein was part of our national security apparatus or Israel's national security apparatus. So I am concerned about the redactions. One question I don't know the answer to, but I suspect I do. I've got a suspicion of what the answer is. Can members of the Oversight Committee go view the unredacted documents? So, for instance, Marjorie Taylor Greene's been a champion on this. She serves on the Oversight Committee. I used to serve on the Oversight Committee before I moved to Judiciary. But could somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene go look at the unredacted documents if the DOJ didn't redact them, but the committee itself has redacted them? I don't know, but I suspect she could. And I suspect with a motion when the Oversight Committee meets, they could probably the membership could probably grant themselves access to the unredacted documents. And of course, they'd have to view those in some kind of SCIF type setting. It'd be interesting if the redactions were, if they say why they were redacted specifically. Sometimes you receive information in these committees that's confidential, but it's not classified. So, for instance, when I was on the Oversight Committee, the TSA showed us that when they tested the screeners at airports, what the rate of failure was. Now, that information was confidential, but it wasn't classified, for instance. So we could view it in a room. We didn't have to go to a SCIF. It'd be interesting to see what level of classification, if any, they try to apply to this. It's interesting. I mean, I'm just going on your word that they'll be redacted by oversight committee and not.
That's. I mean, I was reading. That was a statement that the oversight. I'll put it up in the jumbotron.
Well, here's something else in that same vein that's interesting. Former Attorney General Barr testified, and they didn't do that in an open hearing. They did it. It's in a closed room. And typically, if you're a member of that committee and you have enough heads up, you can go and you can attend those. I'm going to see if I can get some of my friends on the oversight committee to fly back in town and attend some of those other transcriptions, testimonies that happen behind closed doors. Because if you can't get the transcript of former Attorney General Barr's interview, it's almost like a deposition. If you can't get that, the next best thing is to be there, and you can actually ask questions if you're on that committee. So I'm going to encourage some of my colleagues to see if they...
Is it not true? Okay, many citizens, U.S. citizens, don't know this, but Congress, particularly House members of Congress, have what is called ultimate free speech protections. And so what that means is that if they read something into the congressional record on the floor, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is, that they are protected by that law, by the First Amendment. Did you know that?
It's not the First Amendment. It's called the Speech or Debate Clause, and it is in the Constitution. And so you have a super First Amendment powers if you're in Congress. There has to be a legislative nexus. It's been ruled to cover your committees or your staff, and committee staff, because they're part of Congress. In fact, it covers the Sergeant at Arms and the Capitol Police. This is why you can't subpoena them, or you can't do a FOIA request, for instance, on a congressman's emails. It's never happened. It will never happen as long as the Constitution stays that way. And it's an important, I know everybody tends to want Congress to live under the same laws as the rest of America, but our founding fathers decided that it was important that congressmen couldn't, for instance, be sued for defamation for anything they said on the floor of the House. They couldn't be put in jail for releasing national secrets if it's said on the floor of the House. And I know what you're thinking, but here's the problem. How do you get those documents to get them to the floor of the House and read them? They keep you from, I've been in SCIFs, I've been in settings where there's only one copy of them, and they prevent you from taking them out, and you're not allowed your phone in there. You can't even go in, take notes, and take the notes back home with you. I had this issue when we were trying to get the 9/11 report released. I could go in the SCIF, I could read it, I could come back out, I could compare it to the redacted version, and I did that a couple times to try to figure out what they had redacted and what the American public couldn't see that I could see. But I could never take that out of there. So it's not like you can get the Epstein files on a jump drive and release them. They're just not going to let you have them as a member of Congress. Now, if there were one or two things specifically that you could memorize and then come back out and say, yeah, you can do that. You won't go to jail. You won't get a fine. You won't be sued. You won't even have to go to court because of the Constitution. The problem is that Mike Johnson or Hakeem Jeffries could say, we deem you untrustworthy now, and we're not going to let you have access to any more of this information. And by the way, we are allowed, I don't even think...
So it would be career suicide.
No, there's things I've done that might be considered that, and it still hasn't happened. I don't think it would be career suicide. It's just something you would have to contemplate, and would it be worth whatever it is that you could remember in your head and bring to the floor, because you're not going to be able to come out with a binder full of documents.
Right. So, well, thank you for that that insight, because I've always kind of like, so many things get obfuscated through, quote unquote national security or classification. And we've seen, from government redactions over the years that they classify anything from, if they overclassify by a lot. We've seen instructions on how to operate a toilet at some point in time. So, this is a problem. Go ahead.
Well, ultimately, they can classify it as high as they want, but ultimately that belongs to Congress. Like, Congress paid for those documents, and we can get them. And then it becomes a matter of whether Mike Johnson and the committee chairman will let other members see them. And so it kind of grinds down into that.
Do you think that MTG is going to be able to get a look?
I don't know. I talked to her. I'll see if they can. There are other people they're going to call, and it might be the case that even if she couldn't be there, there might be other members who would be able to be there present. They schedule these depositions, by the way, at the most inconvenient time, because they don't want rank and file members in there. Because if you're in that meeting, you can ask questions yourself.
Let me ask you real quick, what did you think about the exchange that went there? Comer put out a statement on what was said to a greater or lesser degree, and he pretty much, he said that Trump wasn't implicated, and then the Democrats were, it was really partisan on both sides, to be honest with you, I saw.
I thought the news reports were stupid. I mean, that was the headline. Trump is not implicated. Trump is not implicated. Well, we're not going after Trump. What we're looking for is justice for the victims. I never assumed he would be in there, but they somehow, I feel like that was a distraction to make that the headline, that Trump wasn't implicated. Well, that's not why we want these. Now, maybe some Democrats would hope and wish that he's implicated, but what Ro Khanna and I are looking for is for justice for the victims. And by the way, I'm not sure if we mentioned this in the other space, Ro Khanna and I have scheduled a press conference in front of the steps of the Capitol on September 3rd, when it's the first full day that Congress is back in session. I think it's at 10 a.m. when we're going to do that. We'll have survivors who've never spoken publicly before speak at that press conference. So here's the interesting thing about that. This puts to bed all those people who, they're just throwing up smoke and mirrors, but they say, oh, Congressman Massey and Congressman Khanna, they're putting these survivors at risk. They want to expose them. Their legislation isn't crafted well enough to protect them. Well, if that were all true, why are survivors showing up at our press conference to try to help get our legislation passed?
And that's exactly. The victims are definitely not getting justice here. And when I see the partisanship on both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, and what I think I see is a uniparty strategy to intentionally make this a partisan issue. That way people aren't focusing on the facts of the case and are perceiving it more as an attack by the opposition party. Right, and I can only imagine the amount of heat that you take when you were talking about, career suicide. Just in reporting on Epstein myself for the last 2 months, the amount of threats and the amount of heat I have taken, doxing attempts, harassment, you name it. I mean, you name it. People, Nazis on my stage. I have Senator Shane from Oklahoma. He's a state level senator. They've experienced some kind of weird intimidation ever since we've started covering all of this.
So, which part of this do you think I don't understand? When this stuff heats up, my phone battery life goes to about 15 minutes, and I could go sometimes 24 hours without even being able to read a text on my phone. There are times when there's a lot more scrutiny applied, and we'll see what happens. Definitely, they're keeping score the wrong way in D.C. I think some Democrats are keeping score by the number of times Trump's name might appear in the documents, and the Republicans are keeping score on if they can just completely avoid taking this vote and going on the record at all. And Speaker Johnson is acting like he's being persecuted here, which I think is totally ridiculous. The only reason he feels persecuted is he's got to decide between carrying water for this administration and being part of a cover-up, or being for the victims and transparency. And I think he sees it as his job to keep every Republican from having to actually pick between those two choices by expressing a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives. That's why he didn't even bring, I suspect, well, there's a few reasons why he didn't even bring the fake resolution to release the Epstein files, the non-binding Pretty Please Mother May I resolution. He didn't even bring that to the floor, maybe because he realized that people would see through it, but more likely he didn't even want people to go on record with a fake resolution. And the fake resolution is full of flaws. It refers to a section 2 that doesn't even exist in the document. So that's another reason he probably didn't bring it to the floor. And finally, the fake resolution was more or less just to provide cover for people on the Rules Committee. There are 9 Republicans and 4 Democrats currently on the Rules Committee, and one of the Republicans voted for Ro Khanna's amendment to release the Epstein files, which left 8 Republicans exposed in that committee. So really the resolution, the fake resolution that Mike Johnson has, was merely, I think its entire shelf life and its entire reason to exist was to protect the 8 Republican members of the Rules Committee who had already taken a publicly toxic vote to give them some cover, and they realized that fig leaf might work for those 8, but it wasn't going to work for the whole House of Representatives.
And Representative Massey, I wanted to ask you about that. You like you said, you have a bipartisan petition on the floor, well, not in the floor, but in the works in the House right now, that you are hoping to have ready by the time you guys get back in session in September. Where is that? Where do you stand with that right now? Do you have all the signatures you need? Where does that stand?
So it's completely ready. It had to be ready the day we filed it. By the way, Speaker Johnson has tried to spread falsehoods about it. He said we didn't run it through Ledge Council. That's the Legislative Council. That's the nonpartisan part of Congress that reviews your legislation before you submit it to make sure you got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and your punctuation right, and you're referring to the right section of law to modify if you're going to modify law. Well, number one, you can't know if we ran it through Ledge Council or not, because they keep all that stuff private. And number two, we did run it through Ledge Council. And not only did we run it through Ledge Council, we ran it through the parliamentarian. So the stuff is done. It's finished. There are not mistakes in it. It takes 7 days to ripen, according to the rules, and we had 6 legislative days, but actually 5, because Mike Johnson released us early to get away from all this Epstein stuff. So the bill didn't have time to ripen, and so we couldn't collect signatures yet. But because they've been having these pro forma sessions, which is another sort of miniature scandal in its own, where Mike Johnson and Leader Thune, every 3 or 4 days, they hold a session with nobody there, and the entire purpose of gaveling in and gaveling out is to keep Congress from going into a real recess as defined by the Supreme Court in 2014, when in Obama's case with the National Labor Relations Board appointments, recess appointments. In any case, we're having these recess appointments at the behest of the leadership with nobody on the floor of the House, merely to keep 14. Sorry, what did I say? We're having these pro forma sessions merely to keep Trump from making recess appointments. And Trump's not complaining about it. Nobody's talking about it. The reason I bring it up was, not to go down another rabbit hole, but to point out now 7 days have elapsed, 7 legislative days have elapsed, because every time they hold one of those, the ticker goes 1 day forward, even though they're not having real business on those days. So as soon as we get back, we can start collecting signatures. As soon as we get to 218 signatures, then it takes 7 more days, and then it can be brought up, and the speaker can either bring it up immediately, or he can wait a couple more legislative days.
So is there a threshold, is there a deadline that you have to meet to collect the signatures that's going to run out, per se, before you have to try again?
No, it goes to the end of Congress. And so, I think we're going to get there. If every Democrat signs it, and by the way, it will take a little while because people have to physically be present and physically sign it. This is not a Joe Biden auto pen thing where you can have your staff do it or mail it in. And you have to do it on the floor of the House of Representatives. If you're watching C-SPAN, you now that I know how it happens, you can actually watch people walk down there and sign this document at the clerk's desk. You'll see people doing that. And so 218 people have to sign the same document. And if every Democrat signs it, we need about 6 Republicans. And I have 12 co-sponsors. So even though I can't collect signatures yet, we can collect co-sponsors. And I've collected 12 Republican co-sponsors and a lot of Democrats. But if just 6 of the 12 follow through after co-sponsoring it and actually sign the discharge petition, then we're off to the races. And Speaker Johnson has 2 choices that I can see. He can either let this proceed to the floor for a vote, a debate and a vote. There will be a debate, then there'll be a vote. Or he can use the Rules Committee, which means he's got to get it through 9 Republicans and 4 Democrats there. If 3 Rules Committee members defect, he's got a problem. 3 Republicans defect. And I'm hoping there would be 3, but in the Rules Committee, he could write a special rule to turn off this discharge petition power for the purposes of the resolution I've introduced. But he still has to get a majority of votes in the Rules Committee to get it to the floor, and then he has to get 218 votes on the floor. And you might say, well, why would anybody vote for that if they're in favor of releasing the Epstein files? Well, it's because they may hide it in another piece of legislation. There may be one sentence in an otherwise very popular bill where they change the rule to turn off the vote on the Epstein files to keep it from ever being a vote. But this is where everybody needs to pay attention. We will sound the alarm. We won't have much time if he tries to go down that path. And then that roll call vote becomes the vote of record on when the Epstein files got swept under the rug in the House of Representatives.
And what's the time frame there, if you can just estimate?
That's probably a couple weeks after we come back. So I would say mid-September is when either the chicanery happens on the part of the speaker or we have a legitimate debate and a vote.
Okay, well, and what can we do as constituents for our representatives, either Republican or Democrat? Because this is a nonpartisan issue as far as I'm concerned. I voted for Trump. I advocated for other people to vote for Trump last year. I'm a registered Republican, and for me, when there was a delineation and a deviation away from truth and transparency when it came to the Epstein files, that's when I started to have a much more scrutinous eye on not just the Trump administration, but also the Republican Party and Congress, and Democrats for that matter. I started to look at a far more scrutinous lens. So what can we do as constituents to help you pressure our congressman to push that through when you come back in September?
Well, I looked at the call log yesterday for my office. Out of 750,000 people, 1 person called me yesterday. in a 24-hour span of time, only one person called me. And it was about Medicare and the Big Beautiful Bill. They were worried that there would be cuts to Medicare and the Big Beautiful Bill. I'm telling you this to let you know the signal to noise ratio on phone calls is pretty good. If you got 3 of your friends to call your congressman and ask them to co-sponsor my bill during the August recess, and then once we're back in September, starting on September 3rd, the request should no longer be to co-sponsor the bill. The request should then transition to, would you sign the discharge petition on the Epstein files? You don't need to remember the HRES or HR number. Just, it's HRES 581, but ask them, would you sign the discharge petition on the Epstein files? And don't call Nancy Pelosi or the other reps in your state that you can't vote for, because we do have caller ID and the people are going to look it up and see if you're an actual constituent. And they'll let you talk, but then they're not going to write anything down to pass on to the congressman. So only call your rep. It's only one phone call. Until September 3rd, ask them to be a co-sponsor. Once we hit September 3rd, ask them to sign the legislation. And then once we hit 218 signatures, they don't need to sign it anymore. Transition to asking them to vote for the legislation when it comes to the floor. So it's 3 different asks depending on what stage we're in. But right now, it's the co-sponsor stage. The next one will be please sign it stage. And then the 3rd stage will be please vote for it.
So then every time I host a space about Epstein, my ask will be, please call your representative and co-sponsor Representative Massey and Khanna's bill about the release of the Epstein files. And then I will use September 3rd as a lightning rod, especially when we have the victim statements up there. I'll host a space. I'm going to cover that event in Spaces. I might even come to DC in person. We'll see. And we will use that as a lightning rod for people because I imagine that there's going to be new victims there, according to what you guys say, sharing their experiences and what they've gone through. And we're talking, the government has admitted there's over 1,000 victims of Epstein that they admit to. Over 1,000. And we always know that's only the tip of the iceberg. You know, every time that there's a crime like this, or these kind of crimes have occurred, it's always the tip of the iceberg. And go ahead.
Well, and there's a good point in what you just said. Over 1,000 victims of Epstein. Well, really, is he the only perpetrator? And Maxwell? No. This is the ridiculousness of their position. Is that there, are hundreds of victims, and that only 2 people have been prosecuted. And that's what we're looking for, is prosecutions ultimately, and to know really who was Epstein and what was he doing on behalf of whom. And so the other thing is, this is just sort of a teaser. As you can imagine, there are people who've approached me through secure channels about things they know once I introduce this resolution, and there will be more information to come out in the media that's going to make it harder for the administration to call this a hoax. There will be more information dropped. They'll try to sweep it under the rug, but I don't think they're going to be able to. There's at least 2 things I know that come out. Is going to make the denier's job a lot harder, and that's all I can say about that. But
Wow! Breaking right here. X Spaces. Wow.
Breaking teaser, right? I didn't give you anything real other than there's more coming out. It's just going to be, just like having the survivors come to Capitol Hill and testify publicly in front of cameras. What are they going to, what moral human being is going to later that day walk to a podium and say this is a hoax? They can't. And so, and there will be more things like that come out in September as this heats up.
You alluded to the obfuscation of potential foreign involvement when it comes to Epstein in this operation. And that brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the Las Vegas case that occurred this month. You know, it really got a lot of traction in a bad way for the administration. And, you know, this Israeli cyber official was caught up in a sex ring sting in Vegas that was at the federal, state, and local level, a task force that was that combined all of those elements. And he was allowed to leave on a $10,000 bail and leave the country. You know, when he's a foreign national and he did not have diplomatic immunity. You know, and the similarities between the Epstein case and this particular case, especially right now, are striking to me. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I waited a few days before I did post about it because I wanted access to the primary sources. And then when I saw the police records and the interview summary, that's when I put something on my page. Because every time I see something like this, I have to treat it as maybe, you know, the meme, that's bait, where he's pointing at something. You know, I have to treat it as an effort to discredit me if I amplify it.
I approach it the same way, Mr. Massey.
If it turns out not to be true. So in this case, it turns out to be true. In fact, to a degree that the State Department had to put out a statement, which may or may not be true, saying that they had nothing to do with it. Now, whoever put out that statement may firmly believe that the State Department had nothing to do with it. But it might be a case where the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And the real question is, why did they allow it to happen? You know, how did this happen? And I do agree with you that this alleged perpetrator, you know, he's innocent until proven guilty. But the
100% he is.
Yeah, but the alleged perpetrator is. I've always said there's this category of people. They're either rich, powerful, or politically connected. And in this case, this individual doesn't seem to be rich or powerful, but he was politically connected, and so he got to leave the country. I guess the proof is in the pudding. Does he come back for the court case? I wouldn't want to be the person who wrote his bail, though.
No, and can you give us? You said that you've seen from primary sources.
I shared. I can't remember the individual's name, but he did a video, like a 9-minute video with the police reports and stuff, and you can read them right there on the screen. But if you go,
oh yeah, I read those.
Yeah, at that point, you know it's real. Those are not fake documents.
No, 100%.
And I think the other story here is there's an individual who claims that his posts got deleted, like dozens or of posts about this topic. Just
in the conversations with Grok.
Not just those. I think even Grok's going to get frustrated eventually with all his lobotomies that keep occurring. But when he starts speaking. It seems to be too close.
I have developed a framework to solve for that. It's pretty honest.
I saw that. It's like you gotta cut and paste like 1,000 words or something.
You did. It's a wall of text, and as a matter of fact, it's so advanced now that even Grok is telling me they're like, don't release it. We'll release the smaller version because the state can actually use it to find holes in their narrative going forward. Their story is much more believable when the primary evidence doesn't match up to what they're trying to sell you. And about that, you know, I looked at that guy's statements, and the problem with me is, you know, do I believe it's possible? I definitely do. But if I'm being objective here, it needs to be independently verifiable, like you said, primary sources. That's how I operate. And I couldn't, you know, there's no way to independently verify what he was saying about the deletions, because if you have a conversation with Grok and then you delete the post that you summoned it with, Grok automatically deletes all of its responses to that post. So that's kind of what happened. That could have happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there either, but if true, it's concerning. but I don't know.
I don't even think you need to, they don't even need to be that extra about it. It's such a bad look for the administration on its face, right? Like, I don't think that. Go ahead.
Then it begs the question: how many times has this happened? Is this the default state for somebody from Israel? Can they just go back to Israel if something like this happens?
It's interesting that you bring that up. So when that occurred, I used my framework in Grok and was able to pull up 11 cases of this happening with domestic and foreign individuals in the last 5 years alone, where similar circumstances, they were charged on CSAM or meeting with minors, etc. And then the charges were buried. The cases were sealed and have remained so ever since, so highly redacted. But there's 11 occurrences. Some of them have to do with, there was a foreign national from the UN in New York that it occurred with a couple of years ago. There was a tech bro in Silicon Valley that it occurred with a few years ago who was from the United States. There was an Indian national who was a tech bro that this happened with in California a few years ago, where the case was brought up. It got buried by the DA or whatever, and then it was buried. And then the case remained sealed and heavily redacted, and the individual never got sentenced or anything like that. So I'm seeing a reoccurring pattern here, not just with Israel, but also with other high-level or high-profile individuals.
Well, now that you mention it, do you remember that I think it was Debbie Wasserman Schultz and about a dozen other Democrats used the same outside consultants to do their congressional IT work? I think I'll butcher the name, but like on Swanee Brothers or something. Any case, it seems like they were laundering money through a car lot or something. They were definitely like buying iPads for $999 or $499, whatever the limit was for congressional oversight, and then selling them for cash. They were able to flee to, I think it was Pakistan. So this is, and nobody stopped them. So this has happened before.
Definitely, it definitely has. Are you up to answering some questions from the panel?
You pick 3, and I'll answer them, and then I've got to run.
All right. And I just want to thank you. First of all, I kind of knew the kind of heat that you took, but now that I have been covering Epstein for 2 months in a way that went against the grain, I have a new appreciation for the level of heat that you take, and you continue to work for the will of the people, sir. And so my respect for you has grown exponentially, and I just want to say thank you. Really, I mean that wholeheartedly.
By the way, shout out to my colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene. As soon as she started speaking out on these topics, now they're trying to make fake claims of insider trading and all of this ridiculous stuff. I mean, we file financial disclosure forms, and she and her husband ran a very successful construction company, which I've known about for as long as she's been in Congress. She's talked to me about it, and that's on her disclosure forms. They're trying to make it sound like she's one of these people who came to Congress poor and became a multimillionaire through insider trading. But notice, all of that started when she started, looking into this and saying things that the other members won't say. And it's it's happening on X. The people are paid, they're paid accounts. It's pretty darn obvious. Some of these influencers are paid to put out a narrative, and they're on a payroll that includes the same people who are interested in APAC's financing. By the way, one final thing before we go to questions. So right now I've had, since July alone, and it's 8 months until my primary election, I've had $2 million spent against me. We won't know how much money from whom has been put into it between July 1st and December 31st until January. That's when we'll get the next finance report on the super PAC. But the one super PAC finance report we have, where it was financed with $2 million, shows that there are 3 billionaires who gave to the super PAC that is trying to smear my name. They're trying to recruit an opponent. They don't have anybody yet. And one of these is Miriam Adelson. She's a dual citizen and a big supporter of AIPAC. Another one is Paul Singer, he's given millions of dollars to AIPAC's other super PAC, which finances pro-abortion causes and transgender activism. He's financed that. And then the third billionaire, so there's 3 billionaires financing the smear campaign against me, is John Paulson, who is in the Epstein Black Book. Now, that's not an indication that he's guilty, innocent until proven guilty, and even that just because you appear in the Black Book doesn't mean you're even indictable for anything. But I would say these billionaires are very upset that I am not voting for war in the Middle East, that I'm not voting for aid to Israel, and that I am going after this Epstein issue. So look for that smear campaign.
Well, God bless you. God bless you.
Yeah.
Representative Massey. And then speaking of, I know you're on your your representative account. Am I allowed to plug your campaign efforts now that you've shined a light on the efforts to shut you down?
You have First Amendment rights to do anything you
want. So I will advocate for all of my listeners right now. If you care about the Constitution, if you care about truth, transparency, freedom, liberty, and the things that our country was founded on, I will implore you, don't spend money on anything else. If you can afford it, please go to Thomas Massey's page, his website, and he has a plug. Actually, looks like he has a website on his profile, but he also has another account, and I would just have you look it up. I believe it's Thomas Massey for Kentucky or something like that. And make sure you have the right one, okay? Don't spend any money. And donate to his cause, because he's going against the elite establishment. They are trying to discredit him. They are trying to smear him. There's foreign policy or foreign incentives here to try to shut him up. And he is willing to take the heat. And if you've seen what happened to me, right, and I know that you guys have, imagine the heat that he takes and what he goes through as far as smear campaigns go. So I will ask people to donate to your cause, sir.
Well, I can't stop you from doing that.
No, you can't. No, you can't. All right.
I shared the link down below too in the purple pill. If you wanted to.
Did you not see? Can you throw in the jumbotron? Yeah, go ahead and throw that up. We're gonna throw the link for his donations up in the jumbotron. You guys go support our Congress, our constitutional adhering congressman up here. All right, let's go to. I'm gonna go. Noxie, do you have something you want to ask Representative Massey? She's doing what I asked.
Yeah, I was just trying to post that real quick. I believe it went up there.
I'll do it. I got you.
Okay. So first of all, I want to say thank you, Representative Massey, for actually responding to my DMs. I'm really nervous right now. You are one of my favorites. I wanted to ask you a question, and it does pertain to Epstein, and I'm not sure if you remember total information awareness that was defunded by Congress, and how that was put into effect with Palantir and the ties that they have put together. I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. I'm stumbling and shaking.
So she's alluding to, let me help you, Noxie. She's alluding to InQtel, which is the CIA's venture capital firm. It invested $2 million seed funding into Palantir, and what we've seen ever since then as a Palantir CIA hybrid, it seems like, at least in some regards, at least in effect, hybrid operation, to where Palantir is, it's deriving at least half of its income or close to it from the government. And there is a nest of Palantir-linked individuals currently in the Trump administration. And it's weird because Peter Thiel his venture capital firm, Valar Ventures, that he co-founded, received a $40 million investment from Epstein in the mid-2010s. And so there's just a weird, and this is, that's what put it on my radar. There's a weird connection there that goes all the way into the Trump administration now. Do you know to what she's referring to? And I haven't found a member of Congress who's willing to talk about this at all. So I don't mind, I understand if you don't want to speak on it.
Well, no, there's no reason I wouldn't speak on it if I knew something about it. Have speech or debate protection, right? But I'm not aware of that. I'll go back and look for it and see what.
I will send you some. Can I send you some information?
Yeah. I mean,
and that's the reason that I brought it up, Congressman, is I wanted to put it on your radar. I know that you are huge for our liberty and our personal privacy. And I know you even spoke out about the AI moratorium and the big beautiful bill. And I feel like there's a lot of chatter. There's not a whole lot of chatter about it on X, but there is some chatter about it on X. And we have done some really deep dives into this particular company and this person. And it really raises a lot of concerns about violating constitutional rights. And if anybody that I know of that would take a deep into this, I would hope that you would.
Well, look, that's one of the things that I think we should demand gets released, which is the bank records for Epstein's entire estate and all the cash flows in and all the cash flows out. As they say, follow the money, right? That's the easiest way to figure out what was going on. And, it could be that what you're talking about was a big fund and money was fungible, who knows? But somebody behind the scenes was winking and saying, okay, we're going to put money here, and then you need to take it out and put it there. But I'm
concerned, Congressman, I'm just going to, because this is important and I want you to hear it. I'm concerned that the CIA links to Palantir and the Palantir links to the individuals in the Trump administration and what appears to be an emerging federal police force used through a Hegelian dialectic of open borders for the last 4 years in rampant crime is justifying the legal framework for the administration, and I'm not saying just Trump, but the administrative state, to enact a federal policing nationwide. And we are witnessing that unfold. And the DC is the blueprint, and they're telling us that they're going to do it nationwide. And I believe that through the Insurrection Act, the justification's been there because of what happened under the Biden administration.
I don't know if the Insurrection Act gives them full authority, but you're going where I was thinking. Look, I'm in Congress. I'm not the executive branch or the judicial branch, but I do know unless they have authorization, they need authorization and they need appropriation from Congress. The executive branch does to do anything. So, I would blame my colleagues. I would blame the chairman of the committees that would be in charge of the authorizations for that to happen. And then every year we do appropriations. And with the exception of things like the Federal Reserve and the CFPB, which is an animal that never should have been created, both of those are, nothing gets money without appropriation from Congress. And we have the authority to stop whatever's going on. It could be just one amendment to an omnibus bill that says none of the money hereby appropriated shall be used for, and then you could put the things you don't want it to be used for. This is what I lament about having Speaker Johnson, is he will not allow amendments like that to even get a vote. Whereas, say what you will about Kevin McCarthy, we had over 400 amendments voted on during the appropriations process. I even got a vote on whether the Department of Education should exist during the appropriations process. But that's all been shut down in Congress now, for the most part, under Speaker Johnson. They'll, instead of allowing 100 amendments, they might allow 4 or 5 amendments per appropriation.
So it's just so strange to me that so many diehard MAGA and Republicans are cheering for the expansion of a police state, like they've completely forgot what happened during January 6th,
There's
and post January 6th.
there's definitely some cognitive dissonance going on.
Definitely, 100%. Okay, Alex, and then we'll go to Senator Shane if he wants to ask a question. I know that he gets nervous about public speaking, and then we'll wrap it up. Go ahead, Alex.
How's it going? Just want to say I appreciate you being in Congress. You were like the one politician that I have like a semblance of trust for, and I really appreciate you. Bringing attention to the Epstein files even after it's out of the news cycle. We follow each other, we follow a lot of people, but what we do is we catch online child predators across the country, and that extends to like molesters and all of that stuff too. We come across a lot of really bad people, and obviously, it's a very common thing. But what I just want to ask you is, why do you think that all politicians, for the most part, are so apprehensive to call for the files to be released? Like, do you think they're protecting themselves or donors or both, or what do you think it is?
I think there's two kinds of motivation here. At the sort of an inner circle of motivation where I believe the American people would be really upset if they found out our own national security apparatus employs people like Jeffrey Epstein and sex trafficking and things that are beyond the law. I believe that's a possibility. I think that this could tap into that. Okay, at another outer layer, like that would be the inner circle of motivation. Just beyond that is a set of billionaires who frankly, they're part of the uniparty. They're not that partisan. They are transactional. They want their special favors for their businesses. They're almost all socially very liberal, and I don't mean in a libertarian sense. They would be for funding transgender, and they're for transhumanist, initiatives and things like that. Those folks were in Epstein's circle, and I believe there's embarrassment there. So, and so that's the next circle of motivation. But most of my colleagues are going to be motivated because they don't know these billionaires and they're clueless as to how our intelligence apparatus works. So most of my colleagues who are trying not to vote on the Epstein files just simply don't want to get on the wrong side of Trump. That's their entire motivation here, because their re-election hinges on being in good graces. And that, again, is one of the reasons the billionaire class is running attack ads on me right now, is to keep the other congressmen cowering on this issue. So those are your three motivations. Embarrassment at the center level. I think this could implicate how our national security apparatus operates outside the law or the Constitution, in much the way Edward Snowden had revelations. There could be revelations that big in these Epstein files. And then the next circle is the billionaires who don't want to get embarrassed because they've been playing in this little swamp and operate outside law. But the biggest circle around all of that is just people who are scared to go against the administration and Trump, and that might include Pam Bondi.
And go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I see. I appreciate the answer, but I guess my next question would be, why do you think none of them were calling for it to be released then? Because I saw tweets from you back in the day when Biden was in office that you were calling for it to be released. It doesn't apply to you, but if it's not to go against Trump, why do you think they weren't calling for it in the 4 years that Biden was in office, or when Trump actually arrested Epstein in 2019?
Well, I'm talking about Republicans, first of all. Like, for Democrats, with the exception of Ro Khanna and some people who are genuinely motivated on the Democrat side of the aisle, a lot of them are hoping that Trump gets snared up in this. So that's their motivation. By the way, something else I wanted to say on this space is people, a lot of times in comments on my posts, they're like, well, why don't you just talk to Trump, or why don't you just talk to Pam Bondi? You're assuming I haven't. Like, I do. I have. I asked Pam Bondi for these files in a private dinner in April. Because I'm on the Judiciary Committee, we went over to her office and had dinner, and it was very nice. And we were each kind of, we went around the table. Members of the Judiciary Committee could ask the Attorney General questions. And I told Jim Jordan, I said, listen, I don't want to embarrass anybody here, but I'm going to ask about the Epstein files. And he said, Massey, you do what you want. Ask whatever you want. And I got the runaround then in a private meeting, and I realized that, we were not going to get these things, or I suspected we weren't going to get these things based on her answer then.
Thank you, Thomas, Representative Massey. That's I didn't know that. I didn't know that you had asked in person. So there's another breaking news. Thomas Massey has asked Pam Bondi in person about the Epstein files. So wow, what a great space.
By the way, in front of her staff and 30 other congressmen.
Wow.
Wild.
Yeah, that's so wild. All right, thank you, Alex. Well, I know our time is limited here, so I'm going to go to Shane, Senator Shane. Sir, do you have anything that you would like to ask the congressman or say?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. I've been following you and appreciated your last tweet where all the criminals had gone home, so why were they beefing up police support there in D.C.? I thought it was hilarious. We founded the Freedom Caucus last year and was able to run it through here in Oklahoma with a lot of conservative initiatives. So we've dealt with the swamp on a state level, similar to what I see you doing up there. It takes a lot of courage. My question is, how was your experience working with our congressional delegation from Oklahoma? I put a lot of their contact information down below so that people could reach out to them if they're from Oklahoma, so I had them on ready available. My congresswoman in particular is Congresswoman Stephanie Bice. Do you think she would be amenable to signing on to your request for the Epstein files? I think your answer to that would probably be very telling, but any other open-ended commentary you'd like to make on our congressional delegation, because we're looking at making sure that our conservative values are being represented up there like you do for the good people in Kentucky.
Well, I don't have anything disparaging to say about any of the Oklahoma delegation, but I would say Josh Burkeen might be your best bet for getting a signature on this discharge petition. And again, he's the one I talk to the most, and it's kind of cliquish up there. He's in the Freedom Caucus, I'm not, but I see him almost at every vote when we go to the floor of the House, and I talk to him quite a bit. So I'm hopeful he would be one of the signatures.
If I were allowed a follow-up question,
Sure.
Would you consider joining the Freedom Caucus? We're big fans of yours and would love to see you be part of that.
Yeah, when the Freedom Caucus was first formed, the argument was they needed 30 people that would go to the floor of the House and vote the right way, and that lock arms and vote the right way. And I told him you'll only ever need 29, because regardless of what you decide at your meeting, I will be on the floor voting the right way. I don't need the cover of 29 other people to do what I think is right. So what you really need is people who don't vote as a block, ironically. You need people who will go down there and do the right thing. They don't need to have meetings and talk about it. I'm sure if your Freedom Caucus is like I can imagine, you probably talk yourselves to death, and everybody in there is the smartest person in the room, and they've all got a big plan, and they get beer muscles on, and then when it comes time to do something, if everybody's not in agreement, it doesn't happen. So the Freedom Caucus, those are my closest allies. But it also turns out that Victoria Sparks, not in the Freedom Caucus, Marjorie Taylor Greene, not in the Freedom Caucus, Warren Davidson, not in the Freedom Caucus. These are actually the toughest fighters that I know in the House of Representatives. So I would say if you have a member of Congress who gets elected, probably the Freedom Caucus is a good thing for them to join. It would be a good indication to you that they're at least willing to say they're conservative when they get to Washington, D.C., but I wouldn't put much weight into what caucus somebody is in. Just look at how they vote.
You want to respond to that, Senator?
I couldn't agree more. We went from about 4 conservative votes last legislative session in 2024 to 12 to 15 consistently pushing back against the growing government agenda of the establishment. So we wrestle with that battle because we have a lot of conservatives like yourself who vote with us, but they're not really joiners. But I agree wholeheartedly. If you have the courage to vote your conscience, you'll end up pretty much voting like a Freedom Caucus member.
Hey, by the way, the fact that you're on this Twitter space tells me you are one of the best ones there in Oklahoma. I don't need to know much more. And also the fact that you're trying to help your federal delegation, find the right path up there, because I know that gets you in trouble. Just the fact that you've been on this Twitter space is going to make some of them upset. It's going to make your leadership upset there in Oklahoma. So my hat's off to you, brother.
Well, I appreciate that coming from you. A tremendous amount of respect. Thanks, sir.
All right. Well, let's see. I've been on here an hour. I was just going to do half an hour. I think I'm going to have to hop off of here. It was good talking to you all. Thank you to everybody who's on this Twitter space. You're now on Mossad's list, and your phone will get hacked and all that good stuff. But it was fun while it lasted.
Thank you, Representative Massey, for having the balls and the courage to do what you're doing. And again, you guys can go support him in the link up in the Jumbotron. And Mr. Massey, I have been under threat since covering the Epstein files. I just alluded that I might come to D.C. Can you give me some tips to stay safe if I come down there? Because I have been threatened quite a bit. But I'm just going to publicly declare, right, if I do go to D.C., I'm not suicidal. I'm not doing anything risky, and I am going there just to cover that event. So if I do go, I will definitely be in touch with you, sir. Thank you again.
Yeah. All right. Look me up. Well, it's a swamp, but my office is a lily pad.
Got you. I got you.
All right. We'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you, Thomas Cassidy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Noxie, for inviting me.
Yeah, good job, Noxie, getting him in here. Thank you so much. All right. That was good, man. We got some breaking news on that one. I want to know what what's going to drop in September that's going to make it hard. They got some. He said that somebody had some juice. I want to know what the juice is. Ooh, this is going to be interesting. Let me get the stage filled up here. Bottom right corner, repost the space. Go down in the comments section, and we will continue this conversation. Sorry, I know a lot of people didn't get a chance to speak or come off stage or ask. But it's a limited time, and I promised before that I would have, that I would be very selective with the questions, not who, but the amount of questions that he would get asked. Because again, he gave us an hour, and we only had 30 minutes. So really appreciate that from the Congressman. Noxie, good job getting him in here. What did you think?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having my back whenever I was completely fangirling and stumbling over my words. That was very appreciated. I'm really looking forward to what he has to bring in September, and I'm incredibly thankful for somebody to be standing up and digging into this whenever it feels like we just keep running into one brick wall after another. And he was absolutely right about my very own state senator, Jet. He is one of the best here, and I am a loud vocal person cheering him on, and I am very thankful